Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we are featuring Schlumberger, and this webinar series is about developing your IP and startups with corporate strategic alliances. So before we begin, I'd like to let everyone know that this series is being done or is been put together in connection to the upcoming third University Startups Demo Day on October 16 and 17. And on that day, we'll be highlighting three major programs. So the first would be the University Startups Demo Day, where we're inviting the startups and universities on the call to submit companies to gain presentation slots at the conference. And those companies that are selected will have meetings with interested corporates and investors. The second highlight of the event is the IP to Startup program, where universities can submit IP and patents, and these IP and patents are to be scored by the corporations in our corporate selection committee, and the highest scoring IP will be distributed in an IP book to allow them to promote and market their IP to different corporates. And the last would be what we call the Investor Roadshow, with the participating Chinese VC funds in our American Chinese Growth Fund. The companies featured here will be those that were selected in the first and second demo days in the last 12 months. So these companies will be presenting to a very select group of investors that are coming specifically to see them. So if you're interested in submitting IP or startups to us, the first deadline has passed. However, we do have a final deadline that's set up. It's on August 25th. So if you'd like to submit, just go to nset2.org and you'll be able to submit either a startup to get a presentation slot and for IP. And, for these two types of submissions, both will be scored by our corporate selection committee, and you'll learn later on that our speaker today from Schlumberger is also part of our corporate selection committee, so he'll be reviewing the companies and the IP that get submitted to the demo day. Just a reminder, we do have upcoming webinars in this series for August. So our lineup includes Evonik on August 3rd, Praxair on August 10th, and Ultratech on August 14th. So if you're interested to know what these corporates are looking for, please come to these webinars, or if you have colleagues that are interested, have them register for this webinar series. All right, so without further ado, I am turning it over now to Dr. Najib Absalbi he's a Corporate University Relations Director at Schlumberger, and he'll talk to us today about what they're looking for and what their corporate needs are in terms of engagement and technology. Najib, hi, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. And thank you everyone for joining today. It's my pleasure to present to you in the next few minutes what Schlumberger is about now, where we're heading into the future, and what our technology needs are, and where we anticipate that we will be engaging with universities and with the startups around innovating for the future of energy. So I will, and then we will have some time to answer the questions. So just to let you know that Schlumberger University Relations, in my capacity as a Director of Corporate University Relations, I oversee relationships with several hundred universities globally. About 100 of those are regarded as strategic to us. And what we do is that we invest in developing talent at these universities, and more importantly, developing novel sciences and technology with a focus on the energy sector overall. To tell you how Schlumberger is organized today, we are organized into 4 technology groups, and we operate with a traditional historic focus on oil and gas, and a look towards a energy future which is a mix of several energy resources, which continue to include oil and gas, but also will include alternative energies, and I will touch on those in the coming slides. Just to give you an idea, we operate in about 85 countries. We're organized into 16 business units globally, and we believe very strongly in distributed development. We have over 100 research, engineering, and manufacturing centers spread over 18 countries. And this way, that helps us tremendously in connecting with universities, not only in the key areas like US and Europe, but also in many areas, including Russia, Middle East, and Asia Pacific regions. Over the past few years, we've gone from a company, over the past decades, we've gone from a company that invested mostly in internal technology development to a company that is exercising what we call open innovation, working with large external collaborators, including companies in various sectors, automotive, aviation, defense, health, chemicals, and also working with, as I mentioned, with a lot of universities globally. About 100 of those we develop technology with. We have a very active technology watch program, and since about 3-4 years ago, we increased our early stage investments in startups with a strong focus on university startups, as we continue to look at the future of talented students and how we can engage them and get them interested in applying what they've learned towards the future of energy, of the energy sector. What do we do with universities? We categorize our programs into 4 different categories. One of them is, of course, research. We do joint research and we sponsor research. And I'll give you an idea of how what things look like now. We do a lot of education-related programs. We share our experience and we engage professors in our development as well, technology development, as well as students. And then we, as I mentioned, as of 3-4 years ago, we started to actively invest in university startups. And of course, universities will continue to be always a source of talent for the future. Just as in general, what the industry, the energy sector faces a lot of technical challenges. We divide those into 3 different themes. One of them, because of our history, we've been looking at petroleum sciences, and more increasingly, we look at energy engineering technology, considering that the future is going to be more and more an energy mix that will be where we're heading in the next decades. We believe very strongly in the role of information sciences and software in shaping up the future of the sector. And more importantly, we also believe very strongly that we need, as a global corporation, to keep in mind about how the importance of how the next generation workforce work, how they interact with technology, and how the future of manufacturing and engineering is shaping up with all the advances in manufacturing technology and so on. So as I mentioned, just to give you an idea of the breadth of our collaboration, I'm just looking at 2012 through 2016. We invested approximately about $50 million in advancing science and engineering with about 70 universities globally. So that's the breadth, and these universities, as I mentioned, are spread over about 18 countries where we have centers, and even some other countries where we may not have centers, and this is where we take the extra step of either engaging the professors and the students in our labs, or placing some of our research scientists and lead engineers in these universities to work with them on developing and on commercializing technology. This is one of the, just to give you an idea, we get this input through our customer base, through our marketing, and we get this input directly also from the Schlumberger board committee, which is focused on the science and technology roadmap of the corporation. So I tried to summarize this in one. Every one of these deserves a long presentation in itself, but just to give you a very brief summary of what we're looking for. So as I mentioned, while historically we've been oil and natural gas, we make it a point to work outside what we call the oil field, looking for technologies because of the breadth of the energy resources that we are considering as our future. One theme is alternative and renewable energy. What are we interested in the coming years is cleaner power at the sites, at the energy extraction sites and production sites, and more importantly, the efficiency of using power, utilizing power in order to produce energy, which is a major issue facing the energy production these days, and will continue unless we find solutions. Emissions monitoring, we are very keen about finding ways of detecting leaks and avoiding leaks if at all possible. And these include all sorts of gases, including natural leaks of hydrocarbons and leaks of hydrocarbons from industrial sites. So this is another area, and in fact, from the last demo day that we've attended, we've been engaging with one of the startup companies which does exactly that. They have a technology that they have presented to us, in addition to some others out that we got to know outside the last demo day. But just to give you an idea that these demo days do in fact give us a lead into what universities are doing and what important technologies they've been commercializing. Another major theme for us is robotics and automation. One of the challenges that faces the energy sector is, in fact, we operate in a world of uncertainty, especially when we're extracting resources from the subsurface of the earth, whether it is oil, whether it's natural gas, whether it's geothermal energy, whether it's mining. All of these resources, all of these are in unstructured, what we call unstructured environments, and to automate with all the uncertainty and the risk that that are coupled with that is a major challenge, a technological challenge that we continue to watch, to do a tech watch, and to engage with the universities and with the startups in order to resolve a lot of the problems that face the industry today. Another one is, as we operate in extreme environments with high pressure and high temperature, we continue to look at novel sensors and instrumentation of the energy production sites and the well sites and so on and so forth, specifically for oil and natural gas wells. And this is and we continue to look for miniaturization of the tools the measurement tools, and therefore we continue to watch very closely the development of novel sensors. All sorts of sensors, including not only nanoelectronic, microelectronic sensors, but also chemical sensors as well. Another area which you probably all hear about and you might be engaged in is what we call the industrial Internet of Things. And what we are interested in there is to be able to remotely operate processes, and many driven by a lot of challenges that face us. One of them, for example, would be harsh environments, operating in the Arctic, operating in deep seas, that typically pose safety threats. And also, how do we control processes remotely? And how do we do that in a way that is very secure in terms of information communication and communications? Another important one for us, as we start looking at solar energy, we start looking at wind energy, is energy storage and transfer. Again, another important challenge for us is the fact that we will continue to operate in extreme environments, and we need to look at solutions that can withstand high temperatures and or very low temperature, in fact, in some cases. Another area of importance is advanced material, including nanochemistry and nanotechnology in general. And one of the things that we've been seriously looking for solutions in is how can we have, for example, nanoparticles that we can trigger based on certain events or based on certain material that are present. And this is very inspired from triggering that happens in the health sector in terms of use of nanomaterial that are used typically in treatments. Additive manufacturing is another area that I have mentioned briefly before, including robust metallurgical processes and how do we transform the manufacturing itself. Schlumberger has a very large manufacturing component itself. We manufacture a lot of the tools and technologies that we deploy in order to explore and produce energy resources, and therefore this additive manufacturing, including 3D printing, advances in 3D and even 4D printing, is an area that is of keen interest to us. Last but not least, as I mentioned and I alluded to, is the security of transmission, and that's, of course, as we start introducing what we call the industrial Internet of Things, cybersecurity becomes a major challenge for everyone. So I hope this gives you an idea of the technology themes. I'm going to mention a little bit that we have a strong preference to engage with universities on these themes as opposed to the private sector. And we see a very strong trend in terms of more and more universities trying to commercialize, working towards commercialization of their IP, monetizing their IP through partnerships, and as well as developing startup companies that us as a corporation would be interested in investing in and partnering with into the future. Now, what we do, as I mentioned, we have a very strong tech watch that scouts globally for technology startups that are relevant to us. We invest amounts of money. It's not large investments. I will mention very briefly what kind of investments we level of investments we do, and we like to work out with the startup company through a very methodical process, getting to a point where we have a joint development agreement and a licensing agreement to co-develop the products. And because we are a technology provider to the energy sector, we are in a good position to facilitate field tests along with our own customers and also within our labs. This is just to say why did we choose and why we're increasing working with with the startup companies as opposed to early stage. We went from a company that decades ago used to do a lot of basic science research, very much like universities do, to a corporation that is more interested in working with what we call the back end of innovation, where startup companies are, because we look at them as they have a strong incentive. They have very low overhead, very little bureaucracy, and no bias towards one sector or another. And this is where we see a lot of benefits working. As I mentioned, we work with both financial investors as well as with strategic investors. This is just a collection of logos of companies that in the public domain. If you search, I saved you the search, so you can take a look and see who does Schlumberger work with. So these are the financial and strategic investors we work with. Now, how we work, we have a technology demand, and this is driven through our internal processes. There is a startup supply, which, as you see very clearly, that university relations is one of the ways we identify the supply, and we get to know them, and we get to watch their technology through as an active technology watch program that includes about 200 of our scientists and lead engineers. And then we typically look at about 1,000 startups yearly. This is how it was over the past 2 years, and this year is about the same. We review about 400. We sign non-disclosure with about 60, and then we do a proof of concept with 15, and then we negotiate about 8. Now, going forward, it is our understanding from our executive management that they like to see this number double yearly. Currently, we've been doing about 2 to 4 investments a year. The executive management is challenging us to take this up to 10 investments per year. Now, what does a typical investment deal look like? Now, what company are we looking for? We're looking for a company that has a well-defined technology or know-how with a clear title to its intellectual property. We prefer to engage with the company that has, for example, filed its patents, cleared its intellectual property, whether with the US Patent Office or internationally. We prefer a small organizational footprint, companies that are not considered large, but small companies with a very simple, as opposed to complex capital structure, and preferably with a pre-revenue or early commercialization stage. However, we did, in some cases where the technology is extremely promising, we would be ready to invest to accelerate. We act as an accelerator by accelerating the research towards reaching commercialization stage. what does an equity investment that we do look like? It's typically between 1 and 10 million. Our equity that we go after is about 20% of the company, and includes exclusivity, but not always. We prefer to have exclusivity in the energy sector, or at least traditionally we've taken that exclusivity in the oil and gas sector, leaving the company to operate in all the other sectors that it could serve. And we more than often invest enough to have a voice on the board and have a board seat. And then what we look at the end is a joint development agreement, and that we can negotiate. Now, the process we go through, as I mentioned, is typically somewhere between 3 to 12 months from the time we identify the startup, we find that company, all the way to negotiating an investment and a joint development agreement. Again, to summarize, the companies we look for, what criteria: a small company, less than 200 people, less than 10 years old, privately owned, generally looking for investors with strategic access. And then what the product we are looking for is novel products, of course. And we typically require exclusive, as I mentioned, in the domain of that we service as a technology and service provider to the energy sector is of interest, keen interest to us. Some examples of companies we have invested in. Liquid Robotics is one of those. It's a Silicon Valley and Hawaii-based startup that we very recently exited to Boeing. Just to give you an idea that if there is a great opportunity to exit our investment, we would do so. So that's one. In fact, this is one of the forms of using wave energy in order to drive these gliders, who could be the future of seismic surveys. And we did pilot and did studies that show that these kind of wave-driven gliders could indeed be used to do seismic surveys in the oceans, and to detect hydrocarbon leaks also in oceans. Another company, which is an MIT spin-off, is Tricity, which is listed as one of the top inventions of 2014 by Time magazine. And our co-investors there include Intel and Toyota and Foxconn. Just to give you an idea of another company, is CelluForce. CelluForce is a nanocrystalline cellulose, which originally was intended and was funded by the paper mill industry. And today we have been working on developing non-toxic renewable resource for stimulating the production in oil and gas wells. So that's a great example of the trend that we're taking. We're moving our sector towards what we call green chemistry. And this CelluForce continues to collaborate with universities in Canada, including Waterloo, including McGill, and others. 908 Devices is also Boston-based, has connections with several universities, and it is a miniaturized mass spectrometer, originally for military applications, which we are using in our operations as well. So I hope I gave you an idea of how we engage and what companies we're looking for, what technologies. So again, in summary, we are looking for a broad range of technology interests, including renewables, energy, renewable energies. We source technologies globally. We don't have a strong preference towards a country or another. We co-develop technology with the portfolio companies. And as I mentioned, if the company is not formed, still in late stage of research, we would be happy to work with that research, with that university to accelerate the commercialization. We facilitate the technology field trials given our connection with our technology partners and our customers. And then we resource for all of Schlumberger, which, as I mentioned, is increasingly diversifying its energy portfolio from oil and natural gas into renewables and alternative energies. So and I mentioned over here to email that you may, if you have any further questions, you may feel free to send me or my colleague, Dr. Ian Cooper, who actually manages our corporate venture, Schlumberger Corporate Venture, and myself, who, as in my role as Director of University Relations. Well, thank you very much for listening, and now I turn it back to Ria.
Okay, thank you, Najib, for your presentation today. It was very informative. But before we move forward, I'd like to remind everyone that if you'd like to engage with Schlumberger and for them to look at your companies or your IP, if you have any IP or startups that fall into any of the technology areas that he specified in his presentation, please go to our website at nset2.org and you can submit either a startup to get scored for you to get a presentation slot at the October 2017 demo day, or if you have IP also to be scored, just send them also over, and the highest scoring companies will be featured in an IP book that are being identified to be developed into companies. All right, so before we move forward, let me just let you know that we are opening it now for Q&A. And Najib, we do have a few questions lined up here, so maybe we can start, and I'll read out the questions to you and you can answer them.
Okay.
As detailed or as as generally as you choose. So our first question is, I am a university with IP and startups. Have you found the demo day to be useful in engaging universities?
Yes, absolutely. And I did mention in my presentation that a very recent example where earlier this year in the April demo day, we did engage with several companies, and we are actively working with one of them towards a joint development agreement in the space of emissions monitoring. And so, yeah, definitely we found that, and there's also same for past demo days. And
okay, thank you, Najib. Our next question is, do you prefer to work with specific universities?
I may have touched on that. As I mentioned, we don't have a preference towards a very specific country or specific universities. We do have our set of what we call strategic technology universities that we typically engage with. However, with our Tech Watch, it's pretty open, and therefore we have a philosophy that we follow the PI and not the university. So if the university happens to have recruited a PI who is doing fantastic work in the area that we are interested in, this is where, however, I have to add to this that why we may prefer sometimes to work with specific university if their process fits how we work, which is what I tried to explain, the process that we go through. So if there is a fit then that would be our preference, is to have a fit in terms of intellectual property consideration and or in terms of uh, working with their spin-offs.
Okay, so our next question is, how did the slowdown in the oil industry affect your engagement with universities or your search for new technologies?
In fact, the interesting part is that this slowdown has caused us to increase, and I mentioned, and I did allude to that very briefly in my talk, is that we have reduced our internal development and looked more outside externally for innovative technologies and novel sciences coming out of universities and university startups. So yes, it did affect, but it is not negatively. It was in fact a positive effect.
Okay. And our next question is, to what extent do you involve the startup founders or inventors if you're interested in the startup?
I mentioned that our we like to get to a point where we actually have a joint development agreement where, and for every one of these engagements, which I didn't add in the details, we do assign one of our lead scientists or engineers to work closely with the inventors or the founders. I mean, we have a business for every one of these investments we make with startups we have two key individuals with a team working with them, and these two key individuals, one of them leads the relationship with the business. Typically, these are the founders, and with we have a lead scientists or engineers who would work with the PIs and the inventors of this of the startup.
All right. And I think this is our last question today. So, our last question is, what advice would you give universities that want to better align their startups and IP to the market?
Make a keen effort to go to events, very much like the demo day. That would be my advice. And while corporations have active tech watch, just like Schlumberger does, watching novel sciences and startups coming out of universities, my advice to universities, and especially their commercialization offices, to do likewise and look for opportunities, including those by NSET2, like the demo day, to do the opposite, which means to watch corporate and engage closer.
Okay, so Najib, thank you very much for your time today. I know you're very, very busy, so we really appreciate you taking, an hour of your day to talk more about what Schlumberger is looking for and to help the universities and the startups that we work with to submit companies to the demo day. And before we conclude today's webinar, I'd just like to remind everyone, if you're interested in participating or in engaging with Schlumberger and other members of our corporate selection committee, all you need to do is submit your company or your IP by August 25th, 2017, in order for them to be scored by Najib and the other members of our selection committee. And if you would like to know like who the members of the selection committee are, all you need to do is go to our website and you should be able to see them here when you apply for the demo day. So it's over, if you scroll down really quickly past the information of the submission, should be able to see more information about the demo day, the dates and the deadlines, as well as the pool of people that work with us for, during each demo day. So this is a rotating pool of corporates that we have engaged with us over the last 18 months. So hopefully, this webinar is informative, and we hope you learned a lot today about what the needs of Schlumberger are. So, Najib, before we conclude today, do you have any last reminders or advice to those listening to this session?
No, first, I like to thank everyone who joined, and I hope to see them at the demo day. If not the next one, then the one after, and wish them the best. And we would look forward to working with them. And as I mentioned again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to write either to NSET2 or to write to me and to Ian Cooper directly, and we'll be happy to engage with them.
All
Thank you
right.
very much.
Okay, so thank you again for your time, Najib, and thank you everyone for listening to this broadcast, and we look forward to engaging with you. Good afternoon, everyone.